Hi, this is Jennifer Toronto with She Shall Be Praised, a podcast about uplifting women and talking about women's issues in life, um, women's life in general. I'm going to do this is my weekly podcast. I've been having a little technical difficulty with my audio, but we'll give this a shot. So if you're seeing me on video, because I do record these on video as well, you'll see I have my headset on. I'm getting an echo today, and that I may know why. I'm not exactly sure why, but I'm hopefully this will minimize the echo, and but although I might clean it up before I post it. So I'm going to be reading today a blog that I wrote in April of 2009. This was on what I'll call terrifying holiness. Um, and I thought about updating it because when I read it, it's going to sound dated. It's clear that I wrote this in April of 2009 or around there. I decided not to. I decided to leave it as is because I do mention an actress and the role that she was in or roles, but it could be really any actress in similar roles. So I just decided to leave it. If you do go look at my blog post, you will see a link to a YouTube video that I wrote earlier today, or not wrote, but made earlier today on something I was thinking about. And I chose this blog post. It's a little out of order, meaning I've been reading them from, sequentially from the beginning when I started writing them. But I went out of order because this one relates a little bit to that one. In the blog post, I didn't expound on that point. In the podcast, I will actually. And that's kind of the fun of doing these because writing is a much more a slower and detailed process. This way I could just kind of go through my thoughts and it doesn't have to be as clean and neat as it does in writing. Um, so I'm looking forward a little bit to going there. Um, but let me go ahead and read it. So this is called Terrifying Holiness, and here it is. My mind was wandering this morning as I thought about feminine beauty and the pitfalls laid out for those who possess it. For some reason, Angelina Jolie came to mind, and I began to think about the movie roles she has taken. Over the years, she has played a number of roles where she's a woman acting in a typically male capacity. She's the female Indiana Jones in the Lara Croft role, or she's a hunter, as in the movie Wanted. I find it interesting that these kinds of female characters usually have a very cavalier attitude towards sex, as though being strong means treating sex as if it does not matter. I'm going to stop right here. I move on in the blog, but this is one of those things I wanted to talk a little bit about. We have kind of equated, I think, in society, this cavalier attitude towards sex with strength, but it's not. There's actually no correlation. In fact, I would say it's the inverse. That when you treat sex as unimportant, then it actually lowers, um, it lessens you on some level, meaning like the biggest gift you can give someone is your body. The closest, the most vulnerable you can be is to share your body. Your body is truly the one thing that you will have your entire life from start to end. It is it is the thing that sometimes we treat as something we can use, but really the way we treat it is going to determine so much of our own quality of life. In the long term, we have years and years and years with our own bodies. And so giving someone access to us on that level should never be treated as a minor thing. It just really shouldn't. So it's not strong. Um, it's not strong to have sex. It's strong to say no when you want to. So that's kind of um, my explanation of this. Like being strong doesn't mean treating sex as if it doesn't matter. Treating sex as if it doesn't matter doesn't mean you're strong. In fact, sometimes it actually means you're weak, that it's an inroad to you, that it's a weakness that you have. Back to the blog. As I pondered this, I thought about heroines of the past, women who filled a masculine role in society, such as Queen Elizabeth or Joan of Arc. These women were associated with virginity. Their abstinence made them more powerful to the human mind. The Greek goddess Artemis, or Diana in Rome, the virgin hunter, was frightening. One of the myths tells of a prince named Actaeon who happened to catch a sight of her taking a bath. She was so furious that she turned him into a stag and his own hounds tore him to pieces. Other myths about her show a similar fierceness in her reaction to threats to her purity or the purity of her attendants. I had always found Artemis to be the least likable of the Greek or Roman gods, and now I think I know why. She had no need for human or divine love. Her judgments were quick and decisive. She existed completely independently of us. It was this, her holiness, that made her so frightening. By contrast, Zeus, the king of the gods, was not like this. He may have been much more powerful than Artemis, but he craved human love. He also feared the wrath of his wife and snuck around to fulfill his needs. Zeus's sexuality made him weak. How much more fearful would he have been if he had not needed human beings? And so that, right? And this is an aside again. Zeus's sexuality made him weak. That statement, his need for human women, his need for that caused him to do such things as fear the wrath of his wife, right? And so that part, he would have been a stronger, more frightening god if it had not been for his sexual proclivities. And there's, kind of where I'm going again, even as, when I talk back about this cavalier attitude towards sex that's shown by these women in masculine theatrical roles. This is God's holiness. He's completely pure and does not need human beings. He exists completely independently from us. We cannot change his mind. We are not his counselors. We cannot sway him or influence him. He does not need what we can give. And no human argument can possibly distract him from executing exact and divine justice. And divine justice requires that each one of us die for the crimes we have committed. It's God's holiness that makes him terrifying. But he also loves us. We have a God who is terrifyingly holy, yet loves us and wants a relationship with us. So rather than immediately executing that divine justice, he delays it and gives a way out. Jesus said, I am the door. If anyone enters by me, he will be saved. God provided a way for us to escape divine judgment in Christ Jesus, but he only gave us that one way out. As reasoning human beings, we want to convince him otherwise. We want him to make concessions and allow us to escape in other ways, but he's holy and complete. He doesn't give us the opportunity. He formed a plan in the beginning, a divine plan, and he will not accept any human alteration or alternative to his plan. To everyone who accepts his plan, however, to everyone who opens the door, he says, I will come in and dine with him, and he with me. And just a quick aside, what is that? I will have dinner with him, right? That was a sign of friendship in the culture, of acceptance. Do you think this is unfair? If you do, you're right. Fairness would require that we all face eternal death because we have all turned away from him. He didn't offer his son on the cross out of fairness, but out of mercy. It is out of mercy that he has given us a way, because justice demands no escape. God told Moses, I will have mercy on whom I have mercy, and he offers that mercy to us. The holiness of God is a difficult concept, and I don't think I've seen it as clearly as I did before this morning, thinking about the Greek goddess Artemis. But as soon as it becomes clear how little God needs us, it is all the more amazing that he wants us and has provided a way for us, his disobedient children, to return to his love. So I echo King David by saying, what is man that you remember him, and the Son of Man that you look after him? O Lord, our Lord, how magnificent is your name in all the earth. So that is what I wrote about about God's holiness and this whole idea of Artemis and not needing people and being separate and untouchable, and there being punishment for even looking at me. Um, I want to read, I put this in. I wanted to create an image that would go along with this, and I've been having some fun with AI. So I decided to ask Grok to generate an image because I had different thoughts, but I didn't, I thought about doing an image of a woman, but then this is really about God, and yet the woman is appropriate because it's also about women, right? So I was struggling a little bit with that, and so I decided I would upload the story. I mean, not the story, but upload what I wrote into Grok, and then ask what would be a good image for this. And when I copied all the words and pasted it into Grok, and I hit enter, seeing if it would allow me to drop down a line or if it was going to submit it, right? And I was hoping it would allow me to drop down a line and I would just ask for the image, but it submitted it. And Grok replied with this analysis of my writing, and then I really wanted to share it. I didn't want to add it on top of the blog. I didn't want to add it underneath because I felt like it would take away from that, and then I couldn't reply. There's no reply to my option to my blog that I saw anyway. And so I decided to save it because I really liked what it wrote, but um, but I wasn't sure how I was going to use it. So it just, when I decided to make this podcast, I thought, man, oops, I'm getting a call. Let me mute that. But I thought it would be great with the blog post to then go ahead and read Grok's response. This is the response Grok gave to what I wrote. My there we go. Your reflection weaves together an intricate tapestry of thoughts, spanning feminine beauty, strength, historical and mythological figures, and ultimately the nature of God's holiness and mercy. It's a fascinating journey from Angelina Jolie's modern cinematic roles to the fierce virginity of Artemis, and then to the profound theological paradox of a holy God who loves despite his independence from us. You've drawn a sharp contrast between the cavalier sexuality of contemporary strong female characters and the chaste power of figures like Joan of Arc, Queen Elizabeth, and Artemis. It's an interesting observation how purity in those older narratives often amplified a woman's strength and mystique, while today's portrayals sometimes equate strength with a kind of detachment from traditional vulnerabilities, including emotional or sexual bonds. Artemis, as you describe her, embodies this to an extreme. Her independence and purity make her untouchable, unyielding, and terrifying. She doesn't need anyone, and that self-sufficiency is what sets her apart, even among the gods. Your pivot to Zeus as a counterpoint is compelling. His power is immense, yet his desires, his need for human connection, his susceptibility to jealousy and fear make him relatable, flawed, and less fearsome in a way. It's a brilliant lens to then view God's holiness, a being so complete, so self-existent, that he has no needs, no weaknesses, no dependencies. That's a chilling thought, isn't it? If Zeus's cravings humanize him, God's lack of need elevates him to something utterly other, something we can't manipulate or bargain with. And yet, as you point out, this wholly independent God doesn't leave us to the justice we deserve. The tension between his holiness and his love is the heartbeat of your reflection. Divine justice, as you frame it, is inflexible. Our rebellion warrants death, no exceptions. But mercy interrupts that story. The image of Jesus as the door is striking, a single narrow escape hatch from the inevitable, offered not because we've earned it, but because God wills it. You're right. It's not fair. Fairness would leave us condemned. Mercy, though, is the wild card, the unexpected gift. Your connection back to Artemis really ties this together. Her holiness, her separateness, mirrors God's in a way, but without the love. She punishes Actaeon with cold precision. God instead offers a way out. That contrast makes the Christian narrative stand out. A God who could stand apart, who doesn't need us, yet chooses to draw near. It's a humbling thought, and your echo of Psalm 8 captures that awe perfectly. What is man? It doesn't finish the statement, but it's what is man that you think of him. Um, I just thought that was really a great. I mean, Grok said it better than I did in some way. Um, I love what it did there. Um, I you know Christianity is so often portrayed as really something it's not. Okay, we either get God is love, right? Just God is love, and everything's acceptable, and that's just not true. Not everything is acceptable. There are firm boundaries. There are lines you do not cross. And I wrote it or said it recently, in something that the lines are actually there for our happiness. Okay, it it's like God made us to function optimally within a certain framework. And when we step outside of that framework, it actually hurts and hinders us. But we don't see it that way. We don't understand it that way because we don't accept that He created us to function a certain way. And so we want to change the rules. We want to be able to function optimally outside of this set of rules. But it just doesn't work. That is just not reality. It is not the way we are made. Um, and so God has this framework within which we are to live. And so the whole God is love, it's only part of the story. Okay? Yes, He's love. But perfect love honestly demands justice. Um, if if you do something to hurt someone else, perfect love for the someone else demands you should be punished. And since we've all done things that have hurt people, that perfect love demands that justice be served, that the damage be righted. And that is when the judgment comes in. That's when judgment comes in, is in righting the wrong. Okay? And since we've all done wrong, we all deserve judgment. And so God is the judge. He is the perfect judge, which means that He knows exactly what we've done and exactly what we deserve. And yet He offers us a way out. That's the love part. And you can't separate the one from the other. Because if you say God is love and accepts everything, well, then He's not loving the people who got hurt. Because the people who got hurt and cry out for justice, then if He never gives them that justice, then what does that make Him? I mean, so many people are angry because they feel God is unjust. So many people cry out for justice. What do I count? What do I matter? If this can happen to me and there is no consequences for anybody else, then how is that right? How is that just? And so justice is a necessary part of this scenario. You can't separate love from justice because love demands justice. Um, but again, there is the offer of redemption with Christianity. So I'm going to kind of step back from that a little bit and go back to the idea of this image of women, right? This the modern image of the woman who has a casual attitude towards sex versus these women in history who were virgins or considered virginal, and that made them untouchable. And I think that the whole contrast between Zeus, who was the king of the gods, and Artemis, who was just, one of the pantheon. She was more holy and frightening than he was, even though he was more powerful than she was. And I think that's really actually a good analogy for the two types of women. The woman who is strong and rules and leads and is untouchable. Her person, you are not allowed access to her person. She is untouchable. And that breeds a respect because not everyone can have access to that. Whereas, the modern woman who has no physical boundary, that's a clear and strong physical boundary, and anyone she chooses can have access to it. It does diminish that in a way. And I think that has hurt, and it's true for men also, actually. If men can be manipulated sexually as well, then it lessens them more so than the man who you can't touch him sexually. He is not going to be manipulated by whatever it is you're trying to do to manipulate him in that way. It is a sign of strength. Um, there is actually a Bible verse, and I shared it with one of the memes that I made from this set. I need to pull it back up, but it says, like a city whose walls are broken through is a person who lacks self control. And the idea is if your walls are broken through, you are vulnerable to enemy attack. The enemy can now come in. They can get in and cause chaos throughout your city. And the same thing when you lack self-control, when you lack these boundaries, that's what a boundary is. It is a point beyond which a person is not allowed. And when you remove the boundaries, you actually introduce vulnerabilities. And so, um, you know, treating sex casually, whether you're male or female, but I'm speaking by and large specifically to females, you know, allowing people who may not be worthy access to you that way is going to introduce vulnerabilities. It's going to it's going to reduce um, your safety mentally, emotionally. It's going to take down, it's going to reduce your authority. I'll say it that way. It's going to reduce your authority. And if you doubt what I say, look at the number of people in power and what their sexual dalliances have done as far as their character and authority is concerned. Imagine these same people, if they had not had those. Imagine John Kennedy without Marilyn Monroe, or Bill Clinton without Monica Lewinsky. Imagine if those things had not happened. They would have had more respect without the women. And so sexual lack of sexual boundaries never raises a person. It just doesn't happen. Um, Only if it's in the right contractual marital relationship is there no reduction in authority. Um, so I think with that I'm going to um, stop this. I really wanted to do some work with the Proverbs 31 woman. I think the Proverbs 31 woman really deserves a second look. Um, but I ended up having to take a long trip out of town, going on Friday, coming back yesterday, and it just left me really tired. And I was going to try and work on it last night, and I crashed. And so it left me unable to work on it. But that is my plan. But then, this whole idea has been on my mind today, um, from the short, the reel that I made this morning to how it played out even in this blog. So maybe this was an issue that just really needed to be addressed. And it does. I think it does. I want to lift women up. I want to give women strength. I want to help women to be emotionally, physically, and mentally healthy and strong. And in order to do that, some of these things must be discussed. So no doubt you'll hear more of that. But I think also that the Proverbs 31 woman, we should take a real good look at her. I think um, I have always kind of resented her because of the high standard I felt how high that bar was raised. as a young woman, it just felt so untouchable. And now, quite a few years later, with my kids all now being adults, I see her a little differently. And I didn't realize back then some of the things that I realize now, that she was not a young woman. And I was trying at, in my late 20s and early 30s to compare myself to a woman who was older and had older families and children and experience and all that sort of thing. So I just want to take a look at her in that way. And as always, I'm going to end this as always. I would love to hear back from you. I really want this to be a discussion. I think we need to talk with each other. We need to have these discussions. I don't want this to strictly be a one-way conversation. So please look for me. I'm on Facebook, Instagram, X, TikTok, um, and then my website is sheshallbepraised.com. I have a link tree too, but if you find me on one of those places, you'll find me on all of them. So look me up, shoot me a message, send me a note, stay with me, and follow up on me. And I would love to have these conversations. So I hope you guys have a great week, and I look forward to what comes next.